Well, what's up guys, and welcome back to Project Time Garage. So we're back for part 2 of our cheap Toyota Solara project, the one that had the 3 big problems. So in the first video I posted about this car, I'll put a link to that up here. We did a quick walk around and just kind of got to know the car a little bit, picked out some of its flaws, and there were plenty of them. The car had 3 major problems with it. And in that video, we fixed 2 of those major problems. One was the starter, and one was the dead miss it had on cylinder 3. Remember, it turned out to be a coil pack, and we happened to have an extra in the trunk. So that fixed it. But that one major problem is still here. And that one major problem is the fact that it starts and it quits. So that's the problem that we're gonna have to tackle now. So here are a few facts that we know about this problem, and maybe some things that will help us out toward resolving it. So the first thing is, the problem seems to come and go. It's intermittent, but I will say that it's getting worse, like a lot worse. Second thing we know for a fact is it involves the fuel pump relay, or the fuel pump itself, or the fuel pump wiring, some of that. Third thing we know is this car had an engine put in it back some time ago. Now, I do know for a fact that this problem existed before the new engine. So there's that piece of information. I know that in its past, the car had been to a couple of very reputable shops in this area trying to get this problem fixed. And one of them said it was a wiring issue and couldn't really trace it down. And the other one said that it seemed to be computer related. Let's see what's happening at the fuel pump. I want to see what the power looks like there. So we're going to put a Noid light across the fuel pump connector back there, and we're just going to see what our voltage looks like. Is the fuel pump even being told to turn on? That'll give us some indication of which way to go. What's a Noid light? It's one of these. It's basically just a little light that has a couple of prongs on the bottom of it. See the prongs? And you can just kind of jam these down into connectors on the car, and you'll know if you have voltage at those connectors or not. So this is a good way to test for power and ground. I got these in a kit. You can get them on Amazon. In fact, they come with like a bunch of different ones for various things. A lot of people use them to troubleshoot fuel injectors and that type stuff, fuel injection circuits. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and get the back seat out of the car and get the fuel pump access cover out of the way. By the way, kudos to you car manufacturers who actually put access ports for your fuel pump so you don't have to drop the tank and crawl into the car. Thank you. I'll get that stuff out of the way, and then I'll show you what we got going on there. So what you're looking at is the fuel pump access cover under the back seat of the car. And I've taken a Noid light and I have back probed the power and the ground to the fuel pump. So when I start the car, you'll see the symptom that's driving me nuts. Okay, I'm going to turn the key on, and you'll notice that the pump does not prime. On these, apparently, according to the service data, the fuel pump doesn't come on and doesn't run until the ECM sees input from the crank position sensor. But anyway, got to turn the engine over to start the pump priming, so I'm going to do that now. And if you'll notice what just happened there, the car started, the pump was engaged, and then the pump lost power. So either the ECM commanded it off, or something else up the line failed. I'll do it again. And it's gone. Oh, and now look, it just kicked back on again and reprimed. And if I keep doing this, the car will eventually start and run. Oh, now, see what's going on? The pump's running, but I'm not sure if the camera is picking up the flash, how this light's flashing. It's pulsing. It shouldn't be pulsing. So that flashy light to me indicates that we don't have consistent power getting back to the pump. So let's go through the next troubleshooting step. So now with the car running, this relay here, which is the circuit opening relay, so it's the second one back. It's this one, circuit opening. Circuit opening relay, according to the schematic, is responsible for turning on the fuel pump. Let me show you that info. That's the circuit opening relay in circuit. This thing gets a ground from the ECM, so it grounds that side of the coil. The other side of the coil gets power from the ignition or IG2 relay, which is the same, I believe, as the EFI relay. So basically, in order to make this relay close, I need a ground from here and I need a power from this side. The reason I'm talking about the circuit opening relay right now is because you probably can't hear it. I'm trying to get down really close to it, but this relay is clicking like a million times a second. It's just crazy. As a matter of fact, it's very consistent with that flashy light going on back there. So the relay, first thought is, well gosh, the relay's bad. Let's just replace the relay. Well, I've done that. I took the horn relay, swapped it, no change. Took the fan relay, swapped it, no change. So it's not a relay problem. Either I'm having intermittent voltage or I'm having intermittent ground. Looking a little closer at this diagram, it tells us that in order for the ECM to provide this ground, it's doing so through a transistor pulling to ground. In order for its logic to kick in and tell it to do that, it tells us up here, when the engine's cranked, the starter relay drives signal output from the star terminal. The ECM is input to the stay terminal, and an any signal is telling us that it needs to see 12 volts from the starter relay terminal. In other words, I'm trying to start the car, and it also needs to see information input from the crankshaft position sensor saying, hey, basically the engine is turning over, command the fuel pump on. Doing so pulls that transistor to ground and provides the ground for this circuit opening relay to actually close the contact and put voltage to the fuel pump. So what I need to do is we need to test this guy right here, because the way this thing is clicking, this relay can't possibly live long. I mean, it's crazy. So to do that, we're going to use one of these guys. A company called Lyle makes these. I'll put a link down in the description to them. They're relay breakouts. So you unplug your relay from its home, you plug this guy in its place, and then you plug your relay back in the top of it, and you have these pins here where you can test and see what's going on. So let me get that put in. And see the this relay just plugs in there, and then this whole thing plugs in here. Let's do some testing. So here's my clicky relay going on. So what I'm going to do first and foremost is I'm going to see if we have power. This terminal here would be the terminal that is coming from the EFI relay. So this was my 12 volts. As you can see, we do, and that's nice, clean, steady voltage. This terminal is the 12 volt supply, and this terminal goes out to the fuel pump, and you can see the light flashing again there. So, and that's because the relay is making and breaking repetitively. So I've got good clean voltage coming from this terminal, which is feeding from the EFI relay. I've got good clean voltage, supply voltage coming in here. So the only thing that leaves with is this terminal here. And this terminal is the ground from that transistor coming out of the ECM. Interesting thing is, I can take my probe and I can touch that lead, and immediately the clicking stops, the relay is made, life is good. So that's sending me down the road of I'm not getting a consistent ground from the ECM. Either I have a wiring problem or a grounding problem, or I'm having issues inside the ECM itself. So I'm sure you can hear the difference in that. So that tells me pretty much everything I need to know right there. But I can take this test a step further. What I have here is just a cheap LED strip. I've got a couple of leads on it, and this is how I'm going to prove it. I have one side going right to the battery positive, and I'm going to use this side as my ground, and I'm going to touch this lead, which should be this should be reading the ground coming off of the ECM. And you can see that light is flashing like crazy. So that tells me that the ground that's being supplied from the ECM is intermittent. And I guess the next thing we need to do is get a schematic out and start troubleshooting and following wires to find out where this goes. In fact, I think the next thing I may do, I may go ahead and go right to the ECM itself, and let's just probe the ECM itself. In order to kind of grasp what's going on here, it might be helpful if we draw out how a relay works. If you already understand how a relay works, skip on through this part because you'll be bored. But if you don't understand how a relay works and why we have them, let me show you here. So why do we need a relay? What do they even do for us? Consider this. Let's say you have your battery and you have your plus side and you have your, let's say you have your ground side here, and your ground side goes over to ground. And let's say you have like a big honking pair of lights you want to run. Let's say you got these, I don't know, these big huge KC daylighters or something. I'm talking things that draw, 15, 20, 30 amps, right? Big load. Well, these things are all wired together, right? They also have a ground on all of them, okay? Because we have power, we have to have ground, right? So power here, ground here. And let's say we want to power these things. What are our options? Well, the most crude method is we could hook a wire right here and a wire right here and run it up there to it. That would turn the lights on, but that's pretty inconvenient. Well, what we could do then, we could come in here with a toggle switch. And that toggle switch takes care of making and breaking that connection. Problem with that is, something that has a really high load will just burn up the toggle switch in pretty short order. So that's not a good solution. Enter the relay. In its simplest form, what a relay does is it takes a big load in and out and makes that connection. And it makes that connection by the use of magnetics, electromagnetics. When you guys were in high school, did you ever make the electromagnetic crane project where you take a spool of wire and you wrap it around a bolt and you touch it to plus and minus of a small 9-volt battery or something and it becomes magnetic? Well, that's essentially what a relay is. So basically a relay lets us pass current through this coil and switch on and off that relay. The important part about that is the power that we have to send through this part is negligible. It's milliamps. It's nothing. We could control it with the tiniest of switches. So in essence, what we've done is we've given ourselves the ability to use a really small light switch in order to control a really heavy load somewhere else. Now that we understand that, let me draw the relay in this application and a little more information about how the thing actually works inside. So this is our relay. And we said that we have an in and we have an out. For lack of better terminology, that's what we're going to call these. And the inside has this little metallic strip right here. Literally it's just a small metallic strip. And notice there's a break in the connection here. So whatever I put in here won't come out here because this little lever is not up making the connection. This is where our coil comes in. Let's say that we have our coil sitting here. I know I'm an artist, right? The basic principle here is if I put positive voltage on one side of this and negative voltage on the other side, it doesn't matter which, this thing will magnetize. This little wiper here will get excited and want to go toward that magnetism and fall against that, completing that circuit. Whenever you turn a relay on, you hear that little click. Well, that's this magnetizing and this little wiper going click up like so. That's all that is. Well, how does it work in relation to the Solara and the ECU? It's like this. We have our battery. We have our battery plus that goes into the key switch. And from the key switch goes over to one side of this coil. So as soon as I turn the key on, voltage is applied here, but there's no ground here yet. So this circuit isn't made, and this isn't magnetized, and this isn't turned on. Our ECU has a ground hanging out here, and this right here goes into it. So, run through it now. Positive, key switch turns on. I got positive voltage sitting all the way across this thing. When the ECU thinks the time is right, it basically makes a little pathway to ground through a transistor. And when it does that, now this coil has positive and negative. It becomes a magnet and it pulls this wiper up. So what about our in and out? What's going on there? Well, in and out's pretty simple. The input is also basically going up to the key, 12 volts. The output is going down to the fuel pump. And the fuel pump has a ground right there. So that is a very simplified version of what it looks like in the car. I turn the key on, I get 12 volts here and 12 volts on my big heavy load side. The ECU says, I don't see any reason to turn on yet, so I'm not going to turn on. So this connection's not made. No magnetization happening here because there's no ground here. When we start turning over the car engine, the ECU reads the crankshaft position sensor and says, is the engine turning over? If yes, check that box. And O, are we seeing voltage from the key switch like we're trying to start the car? If yes, Check that box. When that happens, the ECU says, okay, these people are trying to start the car. Let's turn the fuel pump on. It makes this connection to ground. This magnetizes. This wiper closes. Fuel pump runs. When you let off the key switch, when you're finished trying to physically start your car, the ECU basically just monitors the signal from the crankshaft position sensor. And as long as it sees the signal from the crankshaft position sensor, it says, keep this ground supplied and keep this coil running. That is precisely where the wheel falls off of our wagon, so to speak. After we start the car, this ground signal is stuttered, is interrupted. It's not a good ground signal anymore. Well, the only place this originates is from the ECU and that transistor in there that is pulling this pathway to ground, and then of course the logic in the ECU that says, yeah, I see all the criteria is met to turn the fuel pump on. Don't know why it has to be this overly complex. I mean, good grief. We've had fuel pump relays for many a moon. I don't know why we have to have a computer make a decision that it's time to turn a fuel pump on, but we do, and we're having problems with it. So that's basically what's going on. And when we hear that relay, by the way, I guess I should write this. This is the circuit opening relay. When we hear this relay under the hood just clicking a million times a second, that's this little wiper right here, closing and opening all those times per second. That's why I said this relay can't possibly last long doing that. It wasn't meant to do that. It was meant to close, stay closed, and when you're done with it, open and stay open. Anyway, that's the relay. That's the problem. That's why my troubleshooting is going to turn toward the ECU now. On these, the ECU is located behind the glove box. So really what we probably need to do is, those things really do get all over the place, don't they? So we have some screws here. We're going to take those out. We'll drop the glove box down, and I'll bring you back when I have that done. We have a Phillips head screw here on the top right, Phillips head screw here in the middle, Phillips head screw here on the top left. If we close the box, we have another screw down here on the bottom left corner. And finally, if we turn our attention all the way down here behind this right hand door seal trim piece, there is a 10mm / Phillips head right there. Once you have all that stuff out of the way, you should be able to grab the glove box and pop it loose. Pop it out. There's also a light connection you'll have to disassemble here. At that point, glove box is free to come out of the car. This is your audio amplifier over here, the thing with the fins on it. And this is your engine control unit, or ECU, here. This is what we're after, this guy here. I think what we're going to do at this point is we're going to consult back with our service data, and we're going to find the pin that comes out of this ECU and runs up to the circuit opening relay. And hopefully we can back probe right here, or wherever the wire's at, we can back probe it and see if that intermittent ground issue shows up here. If it does, then we're either dealing with a poor ground on the ECU, which is not likely, or we're dealing with something at the circuit board level with the ECU. So according to the diagram, I just highlighted this wire in red. You'll see here coming out of the FC terminal of the ECU, which it says is pin 25 out of there. I've not found a pinout that appears to be exactly the same as what I have. and I don't have all data and things like that, so we're going to do a little bit of guessing. But anyway, this wire here, it says it's green and red, and it goes all the way down through here, jumps over to the next page, comes all the way around, and goes right up to the circuit opening relay on the negative side of the coil of that circuit opening relay. It doesn't depict if there are any connectors involved between there. I don't know if there are or not. Who knows? But here's what we're going to do. Check this out. Negative battery cable is unhooked. See right there? Because I'm about to play with the ECU a little bit. Unplug it and plug it up. Don't want to damage anything. Okay, let me show you what kind of redneckery I have going on here. This is where the relay was, the circuit opening relay. This is the negative side of that circuit opening relay, or this is the negative side of the coil, where the coil would be on that relay. So this wire that connects here goes out to the ECU and supposedly connects to that green and red wire. Again, we don't know if there are any connectors in there or not. I don't have enough service to show me that. So anyway, here's what I've got. I've got a back probe in there. Nice yellow wire running all the way around. I have it clipped into my multimeter red lead. That's going all the way in the car, laying right there. On my other side of the multimeter, call this the negative side, it goes around here, clips into this lead. And what I've done here, maybe you can see this, but I've put a small wire around that because all of the connectors there are so tiny that my back probe needles are not strong enough or not small enough to get in there. So the negative battery cable is disconnected. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to unplug this ECU, and we're going to start probing to try to find wires. So the first thing I'm going to do, which is the easiest thing for me, is just see if we can find a green and red wire. That's a green and orange wire. Green and black. Oh, look, there's a green and red right there. There's the green and red right there. Let's get our back probe stuff together and let's just see if that happens to be it. On my multimeter, I'm going to go over to continuity, so the thing will beep whenever I basically touch the leads together. And hopefully will beep whenever I get on this wire. Alright, we said it was this one. So when I hit this wire, that's definitely the same one. And it never stops. Alright, so this green with red is my wire for sure. Alright, plug this guy back in. So I believe the next thing we're going to do here is we're going to start the car and we're going to back probe it right there, and we're going to see if we still have flashy intermittent ground or if we have a good solid ground. If I have a solid ground, that indicates to me that maybe there's a break in the wire somewhere and the engine running and the car vibrating is making it intermittent flash like that. So second one over right here. All right, so there it is. I'm on it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to gingerly hook up the battery cable. Then we're going to start the car and we're going to see what happens here. Okay, we're back. So here's what I have going on. I have the relay back in place. You can hear that it's clicking like crazy as usual. I have this yellow lead here going all the way into the car, clips onto a red one there, all the way into the car, all the way down, and we're back probed into the ECU on that green and red. Okay, basically I've tapped into the ground signal coming from the ECU. That goes into one side of this LED strip. If I take the other side of this LED strip and I connect it to power, the ground that's supplied to this LED strip coming from here should be coming from the ECU, and I should be able to get a real-time picture of what kind of ground that ECU is supplying. So let's do that. And there we go. You can see, you can probably see, yeah. So that ground is terrible looking. It's pulsing like crazy. Definitely not what we want. So that pretty much tells me that the ground signal coming out of the ECU is not constant. And just to further test this theory, I can unhook this. This is the ground of the ECU, and I can ground it out, and immediately our relay is quiet and things are normal. So that's the deal. In fact, you can touch it to anything that is grounded to the body and the relay gets quiet. So that's the deal. That pretty much says the whole thing. Well, it looks like maybe the ECU is the issue here. After all, we've proven now that the single wire that goes from the ECU connector pin all the way to the circuit opening relay's negative coil side is good. It's a solid wire. I've ohmed it out. It's dead good. It's just that the ECU is sending out a stuttered ground. So I'm afraid the issue there is the ECU. But I did find a used ECU on eBay that matches the part number of this car for like 28 bucks. So went ahead and ordered it, and on the next episode we'll get that thing put in and see if our problem goes away or see if we're going to finish losing our minds or not. Anyway, that's all for this video, guys. Appreciate you watching. Don't forget to check out our friends over at Automatic Garage. I'll link to their channel down there. If you haven't already subscribed, please consider doing so. You can just click that little icon down there in the corner of the screen that looks like my logo and subscribe. While you're at it, click the little bell icon down there. You'll get notified when we put out new videos. So guys, don't forget, like, share, subscribe, tell all your friends about us, and I'll see you next time.